All right, welcome everybody to another edition of Ranking the Albums. And today we are going to dig into the catalog of none other than Quiet Riot. And man, what a career, what a history this band has had with all the different players involved in it and the different eras of the band. And it's just hard to believe that after everything that's gone on here, that these guys are still active out on in the touring circuit right now. They haven't made a new album since 2019 during the Hollywood Cowboys album, but we are going to take all the studio releases from 1977 all the way up until that Hollywood Cowboys album. The only one we're going to kind of disregard is the Quiet Riot 10, and it only has 6 songs on it that are new, more like an EP, and we're just going to set that off to the side and not rank it. It's not a full album. It's got some live stuff mixed in there. So we're just going to dig deep into the regular catalog here. And we're going to start them off. If you add them all up, we've got 13 of them. 13 of these bad boys with the Quiet Riot mask and all on most of them. And starting things off is none other than that last album they released in 2019. So I have Hollywood Cowboys at numbered 13 ranked out of the 13 albums. It would turn out to be Frankie Banali's last album that he played on. He also produced it. It was a Frontier released on Frontiers Records. It's just an average release. Nothing on here to get excited about. Very pedestrian. And to tell you the truth, considering we got Chuck Wright on bass and Alex Grossi on guitar, James Durbin on vocals for his second album, I expected a lot better. I really think Durbin did a great job live with the catalog. But on this album, it's just nothing that stands out here. Arrows and Angels is probably the best song that I can come across on this album that I can even has a little life to it. The rest of this album, just just a tanking album, unfortunately. So that's what we got for number 13. Number 12, we are going to go back, sadly, to 1978, and that's going to be the debut Quiet Riot album. And that features obviously Kevin DuBrow on lead vocals, and of course, Randy Rhoads on lead and rhythm guitars, Kelly Garney, bass, Drew Forsyth on drums. These first 2 releases were only released in Japan. This one was produced by Derek Lawrence, and it's just an inauspicious debut. Is nothing really memorable on this record, and that's sad to say because obviously this is Randy Rhoads we're talking about, but there just isn't anything on here that would remind you from the Ozzy era of Randy Rhoads or even the next album. Um, just uh, just another more like a glam pop type album is what many have called it. Nothing really biting or heavy, and it shows. There's not too much memorable on here. Um, I would say probably the best song on the album is the cover of Tin Soldier, and even that's kind of a weak version. I've heard better, but it is what it is. That was the album that at least got them on the map as their first recording after they got signed out of the Hollywood scene back there. So that is my number 12, the debut Quiet Riot album from 1978. We're going to go back number 11. I'm taking you back to the last album with Kevin DuBrow, and that's none other than 2006, the Rehab album. It was produced by DuBrow and Frankie Banali on Chavez Records. And yeah, this album, I know that these guys really bragged about it, calling it their best album, that they recorded. They had Tony Franklin on bass, and it just, for me, Free is a great way to kick off the album. In Harm's Way is another track that I like. But other than that, take it or leave it. Michael Lardy from Great White had a hand in writing a few of these songs, like South of Heaven. But yeah, just nothing on here that really makes you think of the old Quiet Riot, and it just, I don't know. They went try to go back more retro, like more like a 70s type feel, but they wanted to update their sound, and they kind of updated themselves right out of the way from the fans. The main thing is the album just didn't do anything, and it just didn't. Most people I know and I talked to, and most of the reviews I've read have been pretty negative towards it, and it's a shame because with Tony Franklin on bass and everything, the music sounds pretty good, but there's just nothing that really reaches out and grabs you. So that's our number 11. Number 10, we're going back to the first album that James Durbin sang on, and that was 2018 Road Rage. Of course, Durbin known for finishing fourth on season 10 of American Idol. This is where Shawn Nichols originally had done the vocals on this album. There was a lot of talk about this, and he was fired before it was ever released. The album was produced by Quiet Riot, and they basically had Durbin come in and quickly record the vocals. And yeah, the finished product is something less to be desired here. James Durbin, I thought was a good fit live. I thought he did the catalog really well when I seen him a few times, and but for some reason on the album, it just doesn't come across. Maybe because you're expecting it to be a really hard hitting album and really loud vocals like Kevin DuBrow was known for, and then you get somebody else in here who doesn't really have that high range, the high end that Kevin had. Although he is a great vocalist, James Durbin. But it is what it is. Number 10, Road Rage. And number 9, we are going to go to the other album that does not feature Kevin DuBrow on lead vocals, and that is 1988 QR, which is the last charting album for the band. It peaked at number 131. So obviously at that point, not too many fans were interested in them. That was after Kevin left. Features vocalist Paul Shortino from Rough Cut, and also bassist Sean McNabb, who would go on to play with Great White, Dokken, and many other of these 80s bands. He's featured on bass, and it's produced by Spencer Proffer, which turned out to be his last album with the band. Um, yeah, I mean, it's got a few moments on here, obviously with Shortino singing. I would say Run to You, uh, Don't Want to Be Your Fool, I'm Falling, Empty Promises. Those are the songs that definitely kind of stand out from the pack. I know they had a couple of these on, they put on the Greatest Hits album that came out shortly after, but I don't know. Those songs just really didn't do much for me here. So that's what we got here. QR number 9. All right, now we're going to get into the rest of the catalog. All features Kevin DuBrow on vocals, as it should. Our number 8, we're going to go back to the year of 1995, and that is none other than Down to the Bone, which was their 8th studio release at the time on Kamikaze Records, and it was also produced by Kevin DuBrow. And this album has been called, among many things, a clunker. Yeah, it's probably the weakest, other than Rehab, the weakest DuBrow release, I feel. Not that, there's a few good songs on here, because there are. I would say the best song is probably Trouble Again. And Whatever It Takes is a song that they played in concert during this tour. I remember they were doing that one. That one is a pretty cool tune. Um, they did the cover of All Day and All the Night. the Kinks cover, which it didn't really set the world on fire, but they did okay with it. Um, Live Till It Hurts was another standout track from the album. I think this album kind of gets a little lost because it's a little long in the tooth. There's like 14 tracks. I think if it would have been pared down to possibly 9 or 10 songs, we would have a much better album. Getting rid of some of the filler on it, and that's one thing Kevin was always you know known for. He always, if there was a song that he considered filler, he definitely didn't like it, and that's one of his. I'll talk about that later on down the road here, but that's what we got. Number 8, Down to the Bone, and that's going to take us to our number 7 album, which was Terrified, 1993. This was the first album Quiet Riot recorded with DeBro. We go back since QR3 from 1986. So we've gone probably about 7 years without hearing DeBro on a Quiet Riot record. So sadly enough, that's where we stand here. The record label they used at the time was Moonstone, and they were more known for music soundtracks. So, and many of the album's songs were actually featured in a movie. Charles Band's Dollman and Demonic Toys was where this was reused. A lot of these songs from. Um, so it's, I guess you can kind of consider it a soundtrack in a way, although at the time of its release, a lot of people just thought it was a new Quiet Riot album with the cover and everything. Um, but there's some good stuff hiding on here, obviously. I would say the fantastic cover of Ichiku Park is the real standout of the track, the Small Faces tune. Um, it features three-fourths of the Mental Health lineup as Carlos Cavazo and Frankie Banali play on the album. This is the only album to feature bassist Kenny Hillary, and sadly enough, a couple years later, he passed away by taking his own life in a suicide. Bobby Rondinelli, a drummer from Rainbow, he also plays on some of the tracks on this album. Um, and some of the better standout tunes on this one, I would say Loaded Gun, Cold Day in Hell, the title track Terrified. Um, yeah, much better than Down to the Bone, probably because this one was pared down to only 10 songs, which makes it more listenable when you don't have any garbage in there really weighing down an album. The main thing is when you have an album, I mean, that's why those 70s and 80s albums are so good with a lot of these bands, because they didn't oversaturate it. Of course, back then they only had LP and cassette, really. They didn't have the CD age, or who knows what could have happened then. But when you only focused in on putting out 35 to 45 minutes of music and 8 to 10 tracks of songs, you had a better shot of having a better sequencing. Everything flowed better. You didn't have no filler, and that seems like I think the CD age actually hurt music more than it actually helped it in some aspects, and that's one of the things we kind of mentioned in a lot of these rankings for bands who were around for both eras. So yeah, so number 7 we have Terrified, and this is not the next one. We Our number 6. This is kind of where we really start getting into the really good albums here, where in my estimation. So number 6 is Alive and Well, kind of like a comeback album in a way, because it was the first album number 1 since 1995. This one was released in 99. And also is the first album by the Mental Health lineup, which last recorded Condition Critical 15 years ago. So, um, yeah, this was a welcoming album back to the catalog to see these guys all play on here. And it was produced by Bob Marlett, who went on to produce many, many acts in the 90s and 2000s here. Um, the top songs right away off the top of my head, obviously Alive and Well, the title cut off the album is a standard that it's one of those songs that really went over really well live. I'm really surprised that they pretty much after this tour they pretty much dropped it. I was really surprised that they didn't keep it in the set because it was such a memorable song, and I thought the band sounded great live when they played it. And the other song on the album that people may remember is the cover of Highway to Hell from AC/DC. I thought they did a really good job on that. Not an easy cover to cover there, and I thought Dubrow knocked it out of the park. And listening to this album, I feel that this is where the band really got a lot of their bite back in them. Having these four guys back together really paid off. So that's a couple of the other highlights I would recommend from this one's Angry and Overpaid and Overworked and Underpaid is another one that's stand out from the album. So, if you're not too familiar with this one, I would say definitely go out and grab it because it's a really decent album, and I'm sure you're going to end up liking it if you like the Metal Health lineup, which only, sadly enough, we only got 4 albums out of these guys with that lineup, and all 4 of them, are very, very memorable to say the least. All right, so now we are going to number 5, and our 5th album is none other than the 1986 QR3, which peaked at number 31 way back there in 86. And it's the first album where bassist Chuck Wright appears as an official member. Um, Couple big songs that you remember from this album if you were around from this era back when MTV was going full tilt there. None other than The Wild and the Young was the big hit. I remember seeing that one on MTV constantly for the period of time that when the album came out until they released their next single. Um, and the next single, obviously, they also had a video for, and that's none other than the Twilight Hotel, which was kind of an oddball choice. I was kind of surprised they picked that as a single. Received light rotation on MTV. It wasn't heavily promoted. Um, didn't really get any airplay on the radio at all. It wasn't a hit or anything. It didn't chart, but it's an okay song. The video was all right. But there's better. And I think one of the things I thought on this album that where they kind of made a mistake was they should have opened it up with the lead off track for the album should have been Put Up or Shut Up, because that song would have been a perfect opening song for an album. I felt that they hiding it where they hit it, didn't really do them any justice. And later on, they actually, I think it was one of the Rock Never Stops. They actually opened with it in many shows during that tour, and that was pretty cool because that's exactly what it sounds like, man. So it's a fist pumper. It gets people going, and put it up or shut it up. Man, that's kind of like what people were always saying to Kevin DeBro back in the day, because he angered a lot of people in the press, sadly enough. So I think it turned off a lot of people. And let's be honest, it wasn't as nowhere near as strong of an album as the previous 2 that the band had recorded. So there you have QR3 coming in at number 5. And number 4, we are going to none other than the 1978 release Quiet Riot 2, which was produced by Warren Entner and Lee DiCarlo. Same lineup as the first album, although by the time the album came out, as you can see from the cover, Rudy Zarzo appears on it, but he did not actually play on the album. That would still be bassist Kelly Garney, but because of his situation with Kevin and him never getting along, he was ousted. a lot of drama there for sure, between that whole situation, which, kind of caused Randy Rhoads to, end up seeking other pastures, and band broke up, and he went to go join Ozzy Osbourne, and the rest is history, for bad or for good. But so Quiet Riot was basically resurrected down the road, which we'll get into in a moment here. But I think the difference between Quiet Riot, the first album, and the Quiet Riot 2, I just think Randy Rhoads really became a better guitar player. And they also played music that was more suited to what he was capable of playing, which really helped out. Um, you can really, really see the improvement of Rhoads on how he stands out on this album, compared to the previous album. And I feel, man, could you only imagine if Rhoads if they made one more album with Randy Rhoads, who knows what could have happened, that album could have been bigger than Metal Health even. The way he went over to Ozzy, and man, what they did with that album, those two albums over there, that would have really been something to see if we were able to, but you can't look ahead and like that, I guess. So can always dream though. But so Quiet Riot 2 actually features a song that many people should be familiar with, and that's the lead off track, Slick Black Cadillac. And I remember hearing this version. Our radio station here in Buffalo played 97 Rock, played it. They actually dug out the old Quiet Riot 2 version, and they would mix it in on days. And that's how I even found out about it initially. So I've been familiar with this song ever since way back in the day. Others, might have, now that these Quiet Riot albums, the first two that were only released in Japan, started becoming more available out there to the public with, online and eBay and all this other stuff. People are just finally getting a chance to discover some of this music, of the great Randy Rhoads. And Slick Black Cadillac is the song I'm referring to. It was a song that a lot of people may not realize that was actually originally recorded with Randy, and Randy actually wrote it with Kevin DeBro. And for some reason, when Kevin put it on the Metal Health album, the credit got taken off from Randy Rhoads, which was kind of not good to see, because the song is pretty much lyrically identically, and the way Carlos Cavazo improvised and played on the song. Yeah, he definitely. I thought he definitely improved it. It's got more teeth on it, the Mental Health version. But overall, it's still a really good version on this album, and it just goes to show you the genius of Randy Rhoads for sure. Um, so definitely, a couple of the other songs on this album. Uh, I think Trouble, obviously, that's one that has been around. They had a different version on the Randy Rhoads Years album that came out. You Drive Me Crazy. The Afterglow of Your Love cover was cool. Very, very solid album compared to the first album. You can definitely see the improvement. The songs are stronger. They put less on to help weed out some of the filler, and they were heading in the right direction. But sadly enough, you know, people just didn't get along, and things happen. And one thing led to another, and Rhodes and the band just broke right up. And Randy went to go join Ozzy, and the rest, they say, is history. So Quiet Riot 2 is number 4. And that takes us down to our number 3, and that's going to be none other than the 2001 release, Guilty Pleasures, which was produced by John Rollo and Quiet Riot. It is the 4th and final album with the Metal Health era lineup. It's the 10th studio release. Um, it's also the last album with guitarist Carlos Cavazo. He never after that after they got back together, they did some more touring in 2003. Him and Rudy left, And that would pretty much, Rudy ended up obviously coming back last year or 2022, but Carlos never has. He's never come back. He's done other things. And I gotta say, Guilty Pleasures is definitely a guilty pleasure of mine. This album, you know, for all of its intent and purposes here, it's probably the hidden gem of the catalog. I believe it or not, got to remember at this point in time, they released this album. They went right out on the road, and they were on the Poison tour that year. Uh, so Poison, Warrant, Quiet Riot, and Enough's Enough. They did a couple legs during the summer. They were pretty much out on the road the whole summer, and that's Quiet Riot got a chance to get on the really big amphitheater stages once again. Um, and yeah, I found there's a they were always pushing Rock the House, which is kind of a cheesy song. I mean, that's the way a lot of people view it. Although it's a song that, I'd rather hear that than some of these older songs, some of these catalog, the later catalog for sure. But they were always hoping they were going to hit gold with that song, and they never really did. Rock the House. They tried to make it a sing along during that concert tour. Um, but a lot of people just didn't know it, and sadly enough, the album didn't sell, it didn't chart. Um, but it's definitely worth seeking out, I feel, if you haven't. There's some really heavy stuff on here. The first two songs on the album, Vicious Circle and Feel the Pain, really start the album off in fine fashion. The sleeper track for me is Shadow of Love. Just love that song. It's probably in my top 10 Quiet Riot songs. It's just a different type of song for them, and I really really felt that they knocked it out of the park on that song. Feed the Machine was another song that they were pushing. They seemed to really like that one. That one was cool. Guilty Pleasures, the title cut. Let Me Be the One. So they had a lot of good songs on this album, and hence why I have it as my number three all-time Quiet Riot album. So I definitely highly recommend it. Give it a listen, see what you think. If you haven't heard it, it's definitely a good album. And that's something you don't hear too much about the later catalog. And obviously, this was the second last album that Dubrow would sing on. So, Guilty Pleasures, number three. And now we get to the meat and potatoes of the ranking here. And obviously, number two is going to be no surprise. Number two is the platinum selling, reached number 15, 1984's Condition Critical, produced by Spencer Proffer. Yeah, but this one they tried to somewhat follow the formula of success of its predecessor, which many picked up on right away, as they even noted it, many reviewers, right down to another Slade cover. And that cover was none other than Mama, We're All Crazy Now, which was pretty much the last song that charted on the band for the band at number 51. And also, oddly enough, the same year, Mama's Boys, an Irish band, they actually recorded a version of their Mama We're All Crazy Now as well. Didn't chart, but it did get a little bit of airplay around it by us here. But I just thought that was something to note. It's weird when two bands release a cover of the same song, especially a kind of like a lesser known song. A lot of people weren't really familiar with this song, although it fit perfectly right into the image of the Quiet Riot machine there with with the mask and all that kind of stuff, and another Slade song, but wasn't really a known Slade song. But so Quiet Riot definitely helped make that song a lot more popular for sure. And it was a big video that was all over MTV. So even if it didn't get higher than number 51, if you were around back then, you saw it, you heard it, and you know it. There's no doubt about that. So yeah, Condition Critical. Um, what else can be said about the album? I think it's got some of the greatest guitar riffs. Sign of the Times is stand out. The opener, Party All Night, one of my highlights of. I love that song. Great song. I think the rest of the album is, okay. You got Winners Take All, which is kind of similar to Thunderbird in a way, with the way they got the sing along chorus there. Um, the song Condition Critical, the title cut, phenomenal. Benelli's drumming is great on it. Kind of reminds you somewhat of taking you back a little bit towards steering you towards Zeppelin in a way with that beat. Um, some of the filler on the album, Scream and Shout, We Were Born to Rock, those songs are pedestrian, but they're okay. You can live with them. But I think two of the sleepers on the album come later on in the album here, and that would be none other than Red Alert, which is to me one of the best songs the band ever recorded, and Bad Boy. Some great guitar work by Cavazo on that one. Another solid drumming track with Benelli. They were saying that Benelli always said that he felt that they got rushed into the studio right after Mental Health, and he felt that maybe one of the reasons why it didn't do as good as Mental Health was because the playing sounds a little not as strong as it could have been. He said they didn't really get no rest. They were pulled off the road. They zipped right into the studio, recorded it, and he feels that had they gotten some downtime heading into the studio, he thinks that the album would have fared a lot better and such. But to me, I still think it's an overall solid album. I know many other people out there consider it like you said, a clone of Metal Health, but it's not really. The songs just aren't as strong as Metal Health overall, but it's still a very good album. It wouldn't have gone platinum had it not. Um, still reached number 15. So, Condition Critical, our number 2, and that's going to take us to numero 1. None other than the 6 times platinum, over 10 million copies worldwide, and the first heavy metal album to ever hit number 1. And what band did it replace? It replaced The Police and their Synchronicity album. Not an easy feat to do. That album was phenomenal by The Police out there. But Quiet Riot did something none of these other bands ever did. They made it all the way to number 1. No matter what happened from that point on, you can't take that away from them. And that seemed to be their climb to glory here. Um, so interestingly enough, Chuck Wright actually plays on 2 songs on this album. He plays on the title cut and Don't Want to Let You Go. So he was brought in to play originally on the album, but then um, they brought Rudy in to do some bass playing, and then everything just gelled perfectly. So Rudy stayed and finished the album. Um, big songs on this album, obviously. Nothing's been bigger than the Slade cover, Come On Feel the Noise, which peaked at number 5, the band's lone top 10 hit. Um, Come On Feel the Noise. And then Mental Health was another big song that got airplay, made it all the way up to number 31. Not bad considering the heaviness of the song to get all the way on the top 40. It's definitely a song you never would have expected to be on the top 40 at that point in time. So that was another thing to help push the album sales. I think another reason why this album did so well is the album itself had a strong, you had Come On Feel the Noise, you had Mental Health, but you had a strong nucleus of songs built around those ones. I mean, I think like for instance, Run for Cover. That is a song the band was always fond of. They used to open up pretty much every era, every singer they've had. They pretty much opened with that song for the majority of their shows. To this day, they still open with it. Run for Cover has always been, one of those songs that just sets the mood, sets the tone, and gets everybody in that great rock and roll mood. And that's it's odd because that song never got no airplay and never was a hit, but it did what it intended to do and helps get that crowd going. And, that's a great song. Another one would be obviously the Thunderbird, the tribute that ended up being a tribute to Randy Rhoads. Kevin actually started writing that song, before everything happened when we lost Randy Rhoads. But once he never finished it. So once he started going back to it, he kind of felt that the lyrics were perfect that he had written at that point as a dedication to Randy Rhoads. And that's a song that during concert, even to this day, that they still dedicate it to the lost members of the band who are no longer with us. Um, Definitely an emotional song, definitely a great song, no doubt. And cup in the aforementioned Slick Black Cadillac and another standout. Obviously, it's like you know that's a song that's always stayed in the set list. They usually play it second. They usually rip right into it. Man, is there a song that's louder than that song in concert? I don't know. I've seen Quiet Riot many times over the years, and I just remember almost losing my hearing. You'd almost think when they're playing in a club, and then you hear that song pounding out of the speaker system. Uh, but just a great song, Slick Black Cadillac. One of the strongest songs, one of the best songs this band ever wrote. And another song that got a lot of airplay off of Metal Health was "Don't Want to Let You Go." Another gem on the album, a little bit more towards the softer side, but Kevin's voice is still strong and sharp and shining through on it, even though the tone of the music is a little bit slower. It's about probably the closest they ever came to writing a true ballad. Love's a Bitch, man, what a great song. No doubt that's another standout of the catalog. Love's a Bitch, just a great song, and really enjoy that one. And Let's Get Crazy. Now, is that a concert anthem or is that a concert album? That song has been played live from the band pretty much ever since they wrote it, and it's pretty much never left the set list. That's just one of those songs that was written for the live performance, and man, they knocked it out of the park on that one. That's definitely one of the highlights too. So, you know, the only song I didn't say anything, Breathless. That is a song here I was mentioning earlier on how Kevin DuBrow didn't like filler. For some reason, he didn't like Breathless. He always considered it filler. Um, I remember they came to Rock and Roll Heaven 1997 with the Metal Health lineup. It was the first time they got to play together in Buffalo since they got back together during that time frame. And I remember asking him after the show because he was kind of billing it as they were playing Metal Health in its entirety, but they didn't play Breathless. And I said, Kevin, you guys didn't play Breathless. He goes, that song's filler. He just said did not like that song as much as others do. But I don't think Breathless is an embarrassment at all. I think that's a great song. Not as strong as perhaps the rest of the songs on the album, but nonetheless, nothing to be ashamed of, that's for sure. So yeah, there you have it. The first album to hit number one, and it opened the doors for many bands from the hair band era. Man, oh man. That's why they get credited for it. You know, they're the first band to really break it through and the barrier, and a lot of the bands from LA got signed right after they did. You got Rat and Dokken and all these other bands. They all, came right after, and Great White, and they all got pushed, and it really did seem like this was the album that helped get that barrier broken down and help get all this LA Hollywood scene, the Sunset Strip, all out there and where everybody can hear it. And obviously it was a great time in music. And at that point, it's good to see some of these bands are still carrying on the tradition. It is what it is. Sometimes people will say, well, it's not the original lineup, it's missing this person, it's missing that person, but I mean, Quiet Riot, let's be honest, they're together right now because they're out there just trying to keep the music alive. Because originally, when Kevin DuBrow passed away in 2007, you know, um, Frankie Banelli ended the band, and for a couple years, he didn't want to have anything to do with it. And then as time went on, he noticed, there's not really much mentioned about Quiet Riot anymore, and and he wanted to help get the music out there again and help perform it because there was nobody out there to left to do it. So he he pulled a band together and went out there and at first I thought too. I was always one of these people that was skeptical about him reviving the band, but now I can see why he did it. And everybody always says, "Oh, there's no original members or this or that." Well, obviously, once Frankie passed, that left basically just bassist Chuck Wright, who had any ties to the band initially at that point, because he was around the band, back in the day. So they ended up getting Rudy Zarzo to come back, and ever since then, Rudy's out there with Jizzy Pearl on vocals and Johnny Kelly on drums, and of course Alex Grossi on guitar, and they are doing exactly what Frankie wants. What he wanted, his wish was for the band to continue, for those guys to keep going out there and spreading the gospel of Quiet Riot. And let's be honest, they do a decent job. When all's said and done, that's all you can ask for. And it was a great time going through this catalog and looking back on it. And that's pretty much all I got for us. So there you have it, the ranking of the catalog of Quiet Riot. And eventually I'll do a song ranking, but that's further on down the road. Stay tuned for some of our other rankings we got coming up shortly. We've got a bunch of things planned, and as well as a new show that we started yesterday called Fragments and Sound Bites, which will be making its debut shortly. Just doing some editing on that. And stay tuned. There's always more to come on Rock Show Critique. Thank you for tuning in, and please subscribe.